All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's class or seminar. Our topic is going to be on common mistakes that amateur players make. What I mean by amateur is like people who don't play chess every day for a living and just don't practice chess every day. And Happy New Year to anyone, Happy Lunar New Year to anyone who celebrates it. So in this class seminar, we're going to talk about 7 mistakes, common mistakes that young players or amateur players make. And this is like usually not found in Grandmaster games because most Grandmasters don't make these types of mistakes. These types of mistakes are usually really easy to fix. So the first mistake we're going to look at is a lack of long-term planning. So Black played this move Queen to C7, and it's white to play. And I'll give you guys about 15 seconds to think about what you would play in this position as white. Remember the concept of having a long-term plan. And I'm gonna go pretty quickly. So just in general, what's your first move that you think of when you see this position? Don't try to like overthink it. Okay, so I'll be ending it shortly. All right. So there's 3 types of players here. There's one of them who would play a move like knight to b5. So the move knight to b5, hopefully y'all realize this knight is hanging because the queen is attacking it. So then a lot of players might just want to move this knight to b5 in order to attack the queen. However, after the move queen to b8, this knight's gonna get kicked next move, and it'll have to return back to its original square, which means it's not really that great. Or it can go back to a3, which isn't an entirely good square either. So knight to b5, it's okay, but it's a very intuitive move. And after knight b5, you don't really have a plan. What are you going to do next after you move the knight to b5? You can't really use this knight to do anything. And then the other option that was chosen a lot was the move bishop to b2. Oh, there's an eval bar here. I showed it on purpose. You can see like how good each of these moves are. So the bishop b2 isn't really that great. This square is highlighted because the bishop, after it moved to b2, it's no longer controlling the f4 square, and the knight on f6 can just go to f4. So after bishop to b2, Black would immediately play this move knight h5. And you'll realize bishop b2, it's natural to put your bishop on this fianchetto square. However, if you put your bishop on d2, it would be a lot more useful seeing more squares. So it's extremely important to have a plan of what you're going to do. After bishop to d2, you can have a plan of, for example, bringing your rook out. And you have a plan of this bishop somehow using this diagonal somehow. Except a lot of players would just be intuitive and play a move like knight b5 or bishop to b2. Right. This is the second position. It's white to move. And the topic is bad trades. I'll give you guys 15 seconds again. Just remember, don't do bad trades in this position. And since I'm only giving you guys 15 seconds, give me the most natural move for you. Remember, don't do bad trades. All right, so you guys can see the poll results. It's what others in this seminar wanted to play. As you can see, the most common move or the most liked move is to castle. And castle is a very good move. However, a lot of players in this position would be afraid of black's attack. It looks like this queen is kind of like really close to the king, and it looks like after, for example, f5, black might be playing e4, forking these pieces, and playing f3, and it looks a little bit scary. However, white can easily stop this attack by just playing bishop d5 check and then playing f4. This move is extremely important to stop black from playing f4. And then rook f2. The point of rook f2 is to put the knight on f1, so after rook h6, you can play knight f1 and guard the h2 pawn. So castling is a very good move. However, some people would be afraid to castle because of this queen and play a different move. b3 is also a perfectly viable option. The point is, I don't want to castle right now. I'll play bishop b2, bishop b5, and kind of play a bit more slow. Queen e4 also was chosen quite a lot. Another good idea. If you don't like the idea of castling in front of black's queen, then why don't you just trade it off first? But what you should not do is to trade on c6. So trading on c6, you might have heard of the concept when you're getting attacked, trade pieces. However, the knight on c6 it's not even attacking anything, and this bishop on e3 is actually a very good defender, and it's also very useful. It can jump to d5 at any moment. So castle and b3 are the most natural moves, they're developing moves. But if you are afraid of castling, you would try to trade, which is a bad move. Because after this, black's bishop improves, he lost his defender, this knight was never attacking. And now you're actually going to lose this g2 pawn. So if you play e4 to try to guard the pawn, then black can play the move pawn to f5. Idea is to continue attacking this g2 pawn. And you can take in two ways. Both of them are losing. If you take with the e pawn, then I just win all your pawns. And if you use the knight to take, then I just take on e4, a double attack. And then bishop takes d3. Black is actually winning in this position. So if you want a reference to like this eval bar, basically at this white mark here, it means plus 1.5, or like basically an extra pawn of advantage. At this mark, it's plus 3, so it's about like 2 pawns or like almost a piece. And then this is even more than that. So this is basically completely decisive advantage, even though black is technically down a pawn. Because white has 7 pawns and black has 6. So why is black winning? Black is winning because, okay, this pawn is going to fall. This king is never going to be able to castle. You can't ever challenge or try to trade this bishop on d3. Like your knight can't go anywhere to attack this bishop. And white in general just can't do anything. So just when you don't know what to do, don't trade pieces. If you're afraid of castling and want to trade, then make sure what you're trading is actually beneficial for you and you're not just getting skinned. All right, so in this position, white's down a rook, which isn't really great. And black's king is weak, so white should try to attack the black's king. And white plays a very natural move, rook f7, in order to try to attack the black queen, which, as you can see, is a good move. Remember, this is +3, so this is completely winning. Okay, black plays the move queen to d6. And the mistake in this position is avoiding complications when attacking. So what would you guys play here? Remember to not avoid complications when you're attacking. You want complications. All right, so it seems like actually 64% of you got the right answer. So e7 check is the right move. It's very obvious what the purpose is. Try to promote and yeah, try to make more complications when you're attacking. So I'll just first go over some variations after e7. Black has a lot of legal moves. First, if they try to take this pawn, because they're already up a rook, and they will think, hey, look, I have 2 rooks for a queen, which isn't so bad, but white's winning because just fork and you win a rook. So if you move your king to e8, then I just play rook g7 and promote with checkmate, because it's a discovered attack. If you play king to d7, there's a lot of ways to win. Simplest is queen to h3 check. If the queen blocks, pin. And if you move the king to, for example, e8, then white can play rook to g7. You're threatening 2 checkmates at once. Black isn't able to stop them both. If the king moves to c7, there's a lot of ways to win. The flashiest way to win is to promote to a knight because it looks cooler. You're giving discover check, so the rook isn't able to capture the knight because it's 2 checks in 1 move. And then you would take the queen on the next move. So the last variation, king to c8. After king to c8, there's 2 ways for white to win. I'm hoping this problem isn't that hard. What would you play as white? Okay. So a lot of you got the answer wrong. Most of you played the move queen to f5 check. The idea is pretty clear. If the king moves to c7, then you promote. However, black isn't always forced to do what you want. There's two ways for black to block the check, and after knight to d7, there's actually no clear way for white to win. In fact, black is winning now. So rook f8 check would be a way to try to promote the e pawn. However, black just has more pieces on f8, and you're not able to do that. And if you try to play a move like knight a4 to play the move knight to b6, black plays king c7, and you're giving time for black to consolidate. Okay, so congratulations to the one and only person who got it right. I'm not sure who. That played rook to h7. So the point of rook h7 is to attack the rook on h8 and force the rook to capture and then promote. And then now you have two queens and you're taking the rook next move. And if you move your rook anywhere else, I can just promote. And it has the added benefit that you're basically just winning everything. So rook h7 is one way to win. Another way to win is the move rook to g7, which I thought was the more obvious solution to promote this pawn. Next move, you're just going to play bishop to g6, promote the pawn. And yeah, white is winning. Yeah, but that was a lot of calculation, and it's definitely not so simple to see to the end of this variation when you play e7 check. And also, when you play the move e7 check, the reason you won't play it is because you think, if it doesn't work, then I'm going to lose the e pawn. But what you should think is, if I play e7 and it works, I win the game. And if it doesn't work, then I lose the pawn. So white in this game decided to play the move queen to f5 in order to try to like guard the pawn, maybe regroup, and then also have an additional threat of queen f6 and play e7 check the next move, where it should be more clear that white is winning. However, after queen to f5, white is no longer winning. So it's black to move. How do you stop all of white's threats? Oh, I should flip the board. So it's black to move. How do you stop white's threats? Okay, there's a lot of people getting the right solution. All right, so we got a 50-50 split on the moves rook e8 and bishop h4. So rook e8, the idea is to stop e7 entirely. And rook e8 those is a winning option. White can play the move queen to f6 check. You can block. It's still a little bit complicated, but it's definitely not as easy as the move bishop to h4. So good thing none of you played queen e7 to stop all the threats. So bishop h4 stops queen f6 and pawn to e7 check. And you don't even allow queen f6. And if you try something like queen h5, I can just go back to e7, and you're kind of like making a turtle because you're up a rook. And after bishop to h4, you play e7, I take, just winning. If you try to play knight a4 to like get some weird counterplay, then I can even play queen to g3 in order to threaten mate on e1. But the point is, when you're attacking, you should embrace complications, even if you can't see to the end of the variation. And you shouldn't try to regroup or gain back not enough material. Which leads us to our fourth mistake, which is being too materialistic. So a lot of you might have already heard of this concept. It's where you are already up a significant amount of material, but you're just not willing to give any of it back. So it's black to move in this position. What would you play? Just remember, don't be materialistic. Or don't be too materialistic. It's sometimes good to be materialistic, but it's not good to be too materialistic. All right, as you can see from the results, we kind of had a bit of everything. We had all of these 5 moves mentioned at least once. And I mentioned how 2 of them were right. So moves like rook hf8, or rook df8, or rook d7, or rook h7, all those 4 moves basically have the same thing. They're passively defending the pawn on f7 because you don't want to give any material away. And after rook hf8, if you're like, okay, maybe I can next move play f5, and maybe I can like slowly maneuver around, you don't have time for that. White can just play the move knight to e3. The idea is to get to the f5 square. And even though the engine still says this position is winning, it's not as clear anymore. So what you should do in this position is to play the move pawn to f5. Yes, it is giving away material, but in the starting position, you were already up a rook and a pawn. And when you're up material, especially when you're up rooks, you want to open the position. For many reasons, When the position's open, in general, it's easier to trade pieces, which is good when you're on material. And if you have more material, you have more space to move your pieces. And when you have rooks, you want to open files. So f5 is a great way to try to open the f file. And if white actually takes the pawn on f5, well, black is clearly winning because the f file has opened. If you take with the e pawn in order to conceal the f file, black can play the move rook f8, or both any rook to f8 is fine, and then play the move c6 in order to open the position more. And notice how the knight can't go to f5 anymore. And in this position, okay, if opening the f file doesn't work, let's try to open the c file. Which leads me to the point, actually, the reason why this position is winning is because you can still play the move c6 in this position. But if this position were locked on the queen side and you weren't able to create any open files, for example, ignore the moves, it's just trying to prove a point. In this position, you can see that it's almost equal, even though black's up significant amount of material, because black isn't able to open any files. And all white needs to do is to draw is to just move back and forth and back and forth. And white might even be slightly better due to this knight on f5. And c6 is a bit more clever way to do this. You realize that f5 from the start doesn't work because white can use pawn takes, so you immediately play the move pawn to c6, giving up this pawn on f7. Though f5, c6, they're both perfectly fine. Okay, this next mistake is called bad trades. We already kind of looked at one where over here where we shouldn't have traded this bishop for this knight because this knight wasn't doing anything for the attack, but this is another one. So I'll give you guys a couple seconds to decide what you want to do. Remember, don't do bad trades. Oh, it's white to move. Small technical difficulty, sorry. There's two right answers for this one. All right, so we had a 50-50 split on knight e5 and b5. So what many players would do in this position is to play the move pawn to b5. So it's very natural to play the move b5. The idea is to use this rook on b1 and open the b file. And it looks like after black captures and you trade everything, look, my rook has an open file, and this b pawn is a backward pawn. However, you might realize that the engines disagree with this. Why? Because after this trade, even though it looks good for white, there's two main mistakes for white. This bishop on d7, which was pretty much in a prison here, it can't go anywhere useful, got traded for this bishop on e2, which has a lot more flexibility. And also, after you traded these pieces, this pawn isn't actually a weak pawn because black can just play b6 and trade the pawn on c5. And if you try to play c6 to prove that this pawn is weak, well, then you're going to lose the pawn. So don't play moves like this. Okay. So the purpose of knight e5, besides looking really cool on this e5 square, looking like an outpost, besides that, it also blocks this queen. Why is this important? Because then the knight can't go to the f4 square anymore. In the first position, we saw that after bishop b2, the knight went to f4, and it became extremely annoying for white. And in this position, if you play like a waiting move or something, black can play the move knight to f4, and then move the knight to d5. And it's not really good for white. These knights are significantly improved, and this bishop can finally get out. So knight e5 cuts that off. Now all black has to do is to move the queen around or just do nothing. The best engine move in this position is bishop to e8, and then after after white plays bishop to c4, one of the best moves is to play bishop to d7, which in short means that black is doing nothing. Okay, so this one's a bit harder. It's about calculation, which I'm sure a lot of you like. So in here, white plays the move rook to h5. The purpose to play rook h1. It's not the best move, but it's certainly not bad. After bishop to b3, the white queen does not run. White plays rook h1, sacrificing the queen because rook to h8 is checkmate. So black runs, and then white trades. Okay, so the title of this mistake is think the thought that the opponent has to do something. The opponent is not always forced to do what you want them to do. So it's white to play. Remember to consider all of your opponent's responses. So for this one, you need a little bit of calculation, so I'll give you guys a bit more time. The move that stands out the most, for sure, is the move bishop takes c6 check. So I'm just gonna tell you guys, calculate bishop takes c6. followed by rook h8 check, obviously, and come up with your conclusion on why it works or why it doesn't work. Okay, so maybe what I said was a bit misleading because after I said that you guys should calculate bishop takes c6, I got like 3 more responses of bishop takes c6. Um, okay, so bishop takes c6 actually doesn't work. Bishop takes c6, you obviously need to calculate. Knight takes c6 is what black would play. Black would not move the king. White gives a check. Black moves their king somewhere. If you move to e7, white can play queen e4 check and then take the rook. And if you go here, white would play queen f5 check. The king would move anywhere, and then you would take the rook. Ooh. Sounds pretty, right? Unfortunately, it doesn't work, as you can clearly see. Why doesn't it work? Because black can block. And after this, white's queen is being attacked, the rook is being attacked, and you can guard both of them in one move, but then you'll have to play down a piece that you sacrificed on c6. So bishop takes c6 doesn't work. Remember to never think that your opponent has to do something. He's in check, he has to move his king. No, he can block. The only case scenario where the king actually has to move and there's no chance of a block is when you give a double check, which means that you're giving 2 checks in one move. In that case, the king has to move no matter what. Okay, so instead, white should play the move queen to b1. This move looks very counterintuitive. Of course, rook h8 check is fine too, because after you play king b7, then you play queen b1. But the point is you play queen b1, and I'll just give a sample variation for black. They trade, and they play king to d7 to get their knight out. So as you can see, this white part is all the way up to this second tick, which means that white is +3, and they're actually a little bit more +3, which means that this is a decisive advantage, and if white plays correctly, white should be able to win the game 10 times out of 10. But why is black winning? Why is white winning? There's 2 main reasons. One of them is the bishop pair, wide open board, good diagonals. And the second one is these 2 undeveloped pieces and this rook. So there's only one move for white to keep this decisive advantage. So what would you play for white? Alright, so most of you like the move bishop f5 check, and then some of you liked rook h8, and some of you liked bishop to f4. So bishop to f5 check, as you can see, the advantage like decreased. Now it's only about +2. It was originally like +3.5. The reason, because you're not really improving. This bishop was doing pretty well on this e4 square. After you've moved it to f5, the next move, black will try to play knight to d7, and your advantage isn't really that big anymore. You're still winning, or better, because you can play the move rook to h8 and pin black's pieces, and then move your bishop back to e4. But like, yeah, just don't play bishop f5 check. And if you play the move like bishop to f4, the knight gets out, which is what white is very afraid of. Don't let this knight get out. It's almost equal now. Same thing goes with king c1, and yeah, d5, it just doesn't work. So you should play the move rook to h8. This pattern is very common. Basically just pinning a piece to the back rank to make them both never able to move. White isn't going to win any material, but black is never going to be able to get these pieces out in the near future. And black, even here, still can't get the knight out. If black tries knight to d7, white can just immediately win. This should be simple, so I'm only going to give you guys like 10 seconds to find the solution after the poll comes out. So what would you play as white? How do you finish the game and punish black for developing this piece? Okay, so you guys have about 10 seconds to get your answers in, and it's already been 5 seconds, so better get your answer in quickly. All right. So, this was kind of a trick question. Both of these moves are winning, and if you play rook e7, black plays rook d8, they got their knight out, it's not that winning anymore. You can play bishop takes c6 and win an exchange and a pawn, which means a rook and a pawn for a minor piece. But the most winning option is to just play rook takes a8. If the king takes, then this is actually mate. I believe this is called like dominoes or swallowtails, I don't know. But there's a name for that type of checkmating pattern, and white just wins. So what's the point? The point is that even though this position does not look that winning for white, white is winning because of their superior rook placement and the bishop pair. And for the topic, the opponent must do this. Never think that your opponent has to do something. Here, don't think that the king has to move. White ended up losing this game from a completely winning position because they were just thinking, oh, the opponent has to move their king here. Okay, so in here, this is like a very normal position. It just came out of the opening. It looks like any move should be fine for white. But I want to see what you guys will play in this position. So this topic is called weakening your own king. So do not weaken your own king. And there's 3 correct answers in this position. All right, so I'm hoping none of you will ever consider anything like the move G4. I just put this move to make you guys sense a false sense of security that okay, I don't play G4, so every other move is correct. Uh, Um, but actually, that's not the case. I just G4 is obviously wrong. I hope I don't need to explain why it's wrong. And developing moves like knight to c3, knight d2, and bishop g5, they're all fine. Knight bd2 is slightly more sophisticated than knight c3 because you're like stopping the pin from happening, and also you can attack this kind of weak pawn and maybe go to b3. And this knight on c3, it's kind of like it can't really go anywhere. But like knight c3, it's completely fine. I'm just saying that knight d2 is a little bit better. Bishop g5, there's definitely nothing wrong with that. Bishop e3, all these moves are normal developing moves, which I'm pretty sure all of you would play in a normal game. Unless you thought, oh, okay, my opponent's gonna pin me, I'm panicking, I'm gonna play the move pawn to h3 in order to stop this. But this move, I gave it an interesting, but it's actually really not that great. The engine is okay with it, but it's for one very specific reason. So for this type of structure, I'm playing h3 in this type of position. What white didn't realize is that black didn't castle, which means that they can pawn storm on this side. And h3 is just kind of helping this pawn storm, because once g5 and g4 comes, it's attacking the knight and the pawn. Whereas when the pawn was on h2, you could just retreat your knight and no harm was done. So moves like this, h3, are what my coach used to call a hook. It's like helping black to attack the king. So here, there's a lot of perfectly fine moves for black. To play g5 and g4, black played the move rook to g8. You could also consider playing h6, but it's not that great because you want to attack the king and you want your rook on the g file, and playing h6 is just kind of a bit slow. So rook to g8 was played, and white saw the prospects of g5 and g4, and they kind of just panicked and they played the move king to h1, which as you can see is a bad move, because they wanted to get their king off of this g file where they thought black would attack. However, this move is not a good move. So there's actually only one move for white in this position in order to prove that the h3 move wasn't that bad or had a reason behind it. So it's white to play. What would you do? There's actually only one correct answer, so choose wisely. And so far, only one person has gotten the correct answer. Another person has gotten it right. All right. So only two of you got this one right because this position is very complicated. So bishop to g5 is another example of a hook. It's just helping black to attack. After the move h6, it's just, and you retreat here, g5, g4. All of these moves, 3 moves in a row for black, are with tempo. Or what a tempo is just basically with a threat. Which obviously isn't good for black, good for white. Bishop to g5. I know the purpose is to try to stop the move g5, except you're not stopping it at all. So c3. The purpose is to play d4. But this move is just a bit too slow. After black plays g5, you get your beautiful pawn center, and it looks really great. However, black is attacking your king, and at the next move they're going to play g4. You can see that this position already isn't that great. So when you're being attacked, a pawn duo sometimes isn't that important. So if you got this move right, then congratulations, you played better than a grandmaster here. You should have played the move pawn to d4 in order to attack black's king. Black is attacking white's king, however they haven't castled yet, so why don't we attack theirs? d4 is potentially trying to open the e-file, which would be great. Okay, so black has to take. If they retreat, then I take you. So they take this pawn on d4. And now white plays knight to d2, not capturing this pawn back immediately. And actually, if black wanted to guard the pawn, they can. Just simply play bishop e6 and then play c5, and you can't guard your pawn. But you don't really care about pawns in this position, you're trying to attack the king. Okay, so bishop b6 obviously isn't that great. Black should play the move g5, or something like g5 in order to continue attacking white's king. However, the purpose of the move d4 was to remove this e-pawn. After this e-pawn is removed, white's pawn can push to e5, and then knight e4, which is why we played knight d2 and we didn't take the pawn. And now, even though the e-file isn't open, you're attacking with these 3 minor pieces, and then if g4 or something, you can play bishop to g5. This position is way too complex to talk about in like any type of level, I'm pretty sure. You would need like a lot of engine analysis in order to understand what's happening in this position. But the point is, definitely white is attacking with these 3 minor pieces, and it's a very unclear position. So, yeah, that's why you should play the move pawn to d4 to attack black's king. And also you might notice when you're attacking, sometimes you don't like pawns. Like if you can make a deal with black and say, hey, can I just like remove my pawn on e4? I just like don't really like this pawn, and then you remove this pawn from the board, then you can just play rook e1 and you're actually winning. So when you're attacking the king, you want to like give your pawns to your opponent. Okay, so anyway, back to the game. White played the move king to h1. They were so afraid of this attack. So black continued the attack with the move knight to h5. The purpose is to continue supporting this g5 push by giving the queen some help. White played c3. Again, this is too slow. White should try to attack the black king with some kind of sacrifices on e5. But unfortunately, they just played c3. They were playing timid and slow. And black played g5. White took this e5 pawn because, okay, if black takes, and white takes on h5, they were doing a discovered attack. So black just lost a pawn. Well, there's only one way to justify this, as usual. This pawn sacrifice. So what would you play as black? Two people have gotten it right. Okay, now there's like 6 people who got it right. Wow. All right. So congratulations to the 6 people who played the move pawn to g4. So knight to g3 check, I put this on purpose. The idea is to basically just try to do something fancy. But unfortunately, you forgot that there was a fork here. So, and if you try to bishop sacrifice here, I don't need to, I don't need to take, which would allow perpetual. I can just play the move queen to f3 and you're losing. So this is again an example of, hey, look, I don't have to do something. I don't need to take your bishop on h3. Okay, so knight to g3 check doesn't work. And we already said if you take on e5, then queen takes h5. This is great. So you should continue the attack with the move pawn to g4. So I'm hoping all of you who played g4 found this tactic. If white takes with the pawn, then black is mate in 3. Queen to h4, and then knight to g3. As you might have seen, the pawn cannot capture this knight because this pin. And on the next move, queen to h1 would be played, and white can't do anything about that. And the same thing goes for knight takes g4. You just take, and then play queen h4. Oh. And then knight to g3. White resents. So h3, even though the engine likes it, says it's fine, it's only because you have the idea of later attacking the king. And when your opponent hasn't castled, be like careful when you're playing moves like h3 or g3, because your opponent can very likely pawn storm you when they haven't castled. So does anyone have any questions about the seminar? All right, if not, I hope you learned something, and that'll be all for today. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye,
You
Esther.
have a great day. Bye.
Bye, thank you.